Hello everybody, this is Havoc with my review on Frostpunk's latest and final DLC, On the Edge. This DLC takes us to where we all really wanted to go, what happened beyond the Great Storm. In Frostpunk's usual style though, it's nothing like I expected it to be. In this review, I'll dive into the new ideas behind the DLC and if they work to bring closure to the series. Fair warning, I will do my best not to spoil everything that goes on in this DLC, but to understand it better, there will be spoilers to a degree. I did receive early access to the game from 11-Bit Studios, and it's always appreciated to work with them. However, this will not have an influence on my opinions of the DLC. One last thing, and then we'll get on with it. If you are interested in buying this DLC, I have a new personal game store, Nexus GG, where you can purchase the game and see exactly how you'll be helping support the channel. It's new, so try not to break it, the link is in the description. Let's dive in. Beyond the Great Storm. As mentioned in the intro, this DLC takes place almost immediately after you survive the Great Storm. What emerged from that storm was not only a people determined to survive in the most hellish of cold conditions, but a previously buried army warehouse, whose entire contents are unknown at the beginning of the game. You are the lead of an outpost team sent by New London to gather any resources found in the area, establishing camp literally on the edge of a cliff. There are some conditions that shape this entire scenario. First, there's no food around at all. Your food supply is completely reliant on New London. Second, there's very limited resources to initially work from. Third, you are not in charge of unlocking laws. That's up to New London. When issues arise, you can reach out to them and they'll do what they can to unlock the laws they believe are necessary to solve the problem. These won't always be the ones you would have chosen, but it's out of your hands. And fourth, there's no generator. You will need to rely 100% on other methods of heating your little outpost. That won't be a huge deal since the game starts quite warm, around -4 degrees Fahrenheit, but it will get colder again. While the limitations of the scenario are frustrating, it was decently easy to get up and running. You establish communications with New London via an administration building and build a transport depot to get those supplies shipped off to the hometown. It's difficult, but not beyond reason to get regular shipments off initially, and New London keeps its end of the bargain by shipping you food daily. As far as beginnings go, this one's going decently well until it doesn't. It falls apart. In Frostpunk, nothing goes well for long, and the same applies to On the Edge. Without giving away the entire first part of the game, conditions get worse and worse between you and New London, and what results is a breaking off from your hometown completely. New London lets you, allowing everyone to think about what they've done and letting you know they'll come back in a few weeks to put us back in line. You are on your own, and the real work begins. Now that you are truly on your own, things get very real. Your scouts are sent to find a stable source of food to survive. You still have to consider your rapidly dwindling supplies, and it's getting colder and colder. Remember, you don't have a generator, and the braziers at your disposal just aren't as effective of a heat source. The small glimmer of hope through this is that you are truly independent. As such, you can choose to officially break off New London, renaming your outpost to, well, whatever you think is appropriate. You are also in charge of your own laws, and the first game's lawbook comes back, letting you finally gain some control over what's being done to help the outpost out. But even with that glimmer of hope, your people are going to be starving and freezing soon, so there's little time to revel in your newfound freedom. Settlements, favor, and relations. As your scouts scour the Frost land, you will finally discover settlements, pockets where people have somehow managed to survive through the Great Storm just like you. Well, with maybe not quite so many people. Your very limited supplies will force you to prioritize helping these other settlements. Each settlement provides you with different resources through a type of diplomacy setting and requests that you help them improve their quality of life in various ways. You eventually form a sort of symbiosis where you need each other's resources to keep operations going smoothly. The mechanics of favor and relations fully come into play here, and they are both incredibly fickle and essential to winning your campaign. What started with New London, favor is a measure of how much a settlement is willing to do for you, essentially for free. The more you request, the lower that favor rating goes. By completing the quality of life and improving the settlements, you will increase the favor rating. It's a great and complicated incentive to prioritize your own resources to cater to these settlements. Favor, I cannot state enough, was key to this campaign. While I did my best to focus on the tasks of other settlements, being able to request any of the resources I needed at regular intervals is what saved my settlement hands down. The balance game is fairly simple to figure out, but it still needs a delicate touch. You can't request everything all at once, and if your favor gets too low, the settlement just won't talk to you. It's important to try and play the long game, but don't hesitate to exploit the settlements in a pinch, especially if it'll help them out eventually. Relations is the other side of that coin. Throughout your campaign, you will be presented with events and situations that will influence your relations with the settlements. These decisions fall along two opposite lines. One choice follows the ideology of the settlement at the cost of discontent for your own outpost, but it will increase the relations with said settlement. The opposite is, well, the opposite. You force your own way of life on the settlements, you get your way, but you aren't sitting well with the other party. Relations had little to no effect for me in any of my run-throughs. As a self-proclaimed veteran of the series, I was able to keep discontent of my own outpost to reasonable levels. Because of this, it was always easy to choose the option that made the settlement happy. Outside of maybe role-playing or just plain curiosity, I rarely chose the option that benefited my own people at that moment, because the small bump in discontent was always worth the long-term benefit of making the settlement happy so I could request more goods from them. The in-game decision. It's nearly impossible to show footage of the in-game without spoiling what's going on, but I've tried to blur the conditions out for you. The in-game ultimatum arrives at the end of the few weeks as you find out the truth behind New London's swift refusal of resources. Your two choices are both immense in scope, and so far I've only been successful in one of them. That means they aren't impossible, but good lord, I'd rather wait out another great storm than purposefully try to take on that split decision. You will need the full support of every settlement to get through to the end, and it's no simple task, since at this point in the game, you need about every scrap of your own resource to meet the goals. Fully understanding the concepts of resource management and the favor relations mechanics is the only thing that I think will honestly get you through to the end here. And it's with this in-game decision that my first real morality decision of the entire DLC came into play. One decision could very possibly lead to the death of lots of people, and while that shouldn't affect you now with Frostpunk, it is your people's husbands, wives, children, family, and friends that are on the line. But the other option could potentially lead to having your freedom taken away, something your people will absolutely not tolerate, what real freedom, although cold and harsh, is like. I will say that the endgame is the second most rewarding achievement of the entire series. Sorry, but nothing beats having constructed the actual generator and all of its bonuses before that deadline. Both of On the Edge's in-game decisions are hard as heck, and as mentioned, it takes coordination of all settlements and your full ability to strategize to make things work. Being able to pull that off is no easy feat, and you should be dang proud to accomplish either. As with every Frostpunk DLC, the endgame was satisfying and a relief. Artificially weak. It's at this point in the review where I do have a bit of a problematic area to pick about the DLC, and it's honestly the first time I've seen some faults in the series. I'm a big fan of context and continuity in a game, and since On the Edge takes place immediately after the Great Storm, I fully expected the people sent to start the Outpost to be the damnedest, hardiest people that New London had to offer. These people just faced temperatures of negative 180 degrees Fahrenheit, with no heat for several days, so I thought there wouldn't be a problem with this group not having it, especially since it was near close to 0 degrees at the start of the game, hot as hell all things considered. But lo and behold, that first night, 6 people fall ill to the cold. Anyone not treated in a day falls severely ill at such warm temperatures. 2 to 3 days of no help and they're dead. Same for food. These people were regularly starving depending on how you played the initial scenario. They've been through excruciating times and survived, but I'll be damned if they ate just a day ago and are starving already. It could be me, but what I found in regards to food and health is that these people have never faced the cold before, nor have they ever really been without food. These people aren't hardy, they're much weaker. That may have been an oversight of the New London officials, but I see it as a bit of a flaw in the DLC. Frostpunk has always shined in the department of difficulty being fitting and natural to the circumstances. Yet in this one, it seems more forced and artificial. Almost like everything they had in place wasn't quite enough to make it difficult, so they piled this back on. It was still a challenge, and don't get me wrong, there are definitely right ways to tackle both health and food in ways to make it not a huge problem. But the resources and manpower required to do so just didn't vibe with me well, and it made things more frustrating than fitting. Conclusion. So, what are my final thoughts overall of the DLC? Well, for one, this DLC has the most unique features tied to it. The addition of settlements and their trade mechanics adds a whole new realm of resource management that I didn't know I needed in Frostpunk, but I thoroughly enjoyed exploring. The favor and relations mechanic is very well done, and it's quite honestly something that I wish could be implemented in some form with other strategy games of the genre. On the Edge also contains what I think is the smallest settlement of the series, and surely the one with the least amount of resources to harvest, which screwed me up a few times in my campaigns where I had to start over. Resource management, people, it is a must to win this campaign. And even the endgame is just very well thought out and executed. The requirements are monumental but not impossible. There are some great challenges to overcome with this series, and I love it in that regard. The seemingly weak people still just rubs me the wrong way though. I get it as a layer of strategy and difficulty, I really do. And without it, it definitely would be a much easier game, but it's the only part of the series that has felt forced. It's not enough to call it a game breaker by any means, it just doesn't fit, plain and simple. I would still very much recommend this DLC in spite of that one thing though. It's a great way to wrap up the series, and now that this series has been completed, I really want to do a chronological run of the base game and its DLC, as I know it will paint a fantastic story arc that brings a pretty huge adventure into fruition. Thanks for watching my review, I hope you liked it. Let me know what you think about it in the comments section, and again, I want to mention Nexus GG, my personal game store where you can purchase the DLC and see just how much you're supporting the channel. If you'd like to see more content such as this, then subscribe to the channel and turn the notification bell on. That's all for my review of Frostpunk's On the Edge DLC. This is Havoc, and I will see you in the next video.